Heavenly Father, I pray for everyone watching this video right now. May you bless them with peace, joy, and breakthroughs in their lives. Amen. Hello, my wonderful family. I am so glad and grateful to have you here with me today. Your support means the world, and I truly don't take it for granted. Before we dive into today's powerful story, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment below to share your thoughts, and of course, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update from this channel. Maya's hands were shaking so violently she could barely hold the resignation letter. 3 strikes and you're out. That's what her manager had said yesterday. 2 complaints about slow service, 1 broken wine glass, and now this morning's disaster with the espresso machine. The letter felt like surrender in her trembling fingers, but staying meant facing another day of whispered criticisms and sideways glances from customers who saw right through her. Asterisk, just get through today. Hand in the letter after the lunch rush. Asterisk. The dining room of Meridian stretched before her like a battlefield. Crystal chandeliers cast judgmental light over tables that cost more than her monthly rent, filled with people whose casual conversations involved stock portfolios and vacation homes. Maya had spent 8 months invisible here, serving the wealthy while nursing student loans that grew larger each month and a dream of opening her own cafe that felt more impossible every day. Her pocket buzzed. A text from her roommate. Asterisk, rent notice came. Need your half by Friday or we're both out. Asterisk. Friday. 3 days. The resignation letter suddenly felt heavier. Without this job, she had nothing. With it, she was slowly drowning in humiliation and barely minimum wage that couldn't cover basic survival in the city. Asterisk, table 12 needs immediate attention. Asterisk. Maya's supervisor, Gerald, appeared beside her with that particular expression that meant trouble. His voice carried the kind of authority that came from managing people he considered beneath him. She followed his pointed gaze across the dining room to a corner table where 2 figures sat in obvious tension. The man looked like he'd stepped out of a business magazine. Sharp suit, silver hair, the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no. But it was the woman across from him who made Maya's breath catch. Elegant, probably in her 70s, with perfectly styled gray hair and designer clothes that screamed money. She was signing rapidly, her hands moving with frustrated precision, while her son, because the family resemblance was unmistakable, stared at her with helpless confusion. They've been arguing for 10 minutes, Gerald continued, his voice dropping to a hiss. Asterisk. None of our staff can understand what she's saying, and he's getting increasingly agitated. The other guests are starting to stare. Handle it. Asterisk. Maya's stomach dropped. She'd watched this scenario play out before. Difficult customers, language barriers, management's solution being to send her over to somehow magically fix situations that were beyond fixing. Usually, she'd approach with apologetic smiles and careful politeness, hoping to diffuse tension through sheer determination to please. But something about the woman's signing made her freeze. Maya recognized the signs. Not just the language. Though she was fluent in ASL, a skill she'd never mentioned on her job application because explaining why felt like ripping open old wounds. But the particular rhythm and style. Sharp, precise movements that spoke of education and sophistication, but underneath, a desperate quality that Maya knew intimately. The quality of someone who'd spent years being misunderstood. The woman was signing. Asterisk, you never listen. You drag me to these places and expect me to sit quietly while you make decisions about my life. I'm not invisible. Asterisk. Her son was obviously lost, his jaw tight with the particular frustration of someone accustomed to control finding himself completely powerless. He kept glancing around the restaurant, clearly aware of the attention they were drawing. Maya's training said to approach with menus, offer assistance with choosing wine, anything to redirect the situation into something manageable. Her survival instincts said to grab the resignation letter from her pocket and walk away from what was clearly going to become another disaster added to her growing list. Instead, she found herself walking toward the table, driven by something deeper than professional obligation. Excuse me, she said softly, stopping beside their table. Both looked up, the man with irritation, the woman with sharp curiosity. Maya took a breath and lifted her hands. Asterisk. I couldn't help but notice you seem frustrated. Is there anything I can help with? Asterisk. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The woman's expression transformed from frustration to shock, then to something that looked almost like recognition. Her son's eyes widened as he watched Maya's hands move with fluid precision. Asterisk, you sign? Asterisk, the woman responded, her movements suddenly filled with hope. Asterisk, yes. I'm Maya, your server today. What can I do to make this better? Asterisk. For a moment, the woman just stared at her. Then she began signing rapidly, and Maya realized she was witnessing something that went far beyond a simple restaurant complaint. Asterisk, 23 years. 23 years I've been asking him to learn, and he brings me to places like this and expects me to communicate through pointing and nodding like a child. He says he's too busy to learn my language, but he has time for 4-hour golf games and board meetings that accomplish nothing. Asterisk. Maya glanced at the man, who was watching their interaction with growing amazement and something that might have been shame. Asterisk, what's your name? Asterisk, Maya asked the woman. Asterisk, Eleanor. Eleanor Chun. Asterisk, the woman paused, studying Maya's face with increasing intensity. Asterisk, you're signing. Where did you learn? You have the rhythm of someone who learned young. Asterisk. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. There was recognition in Eleanor's expression now, the kind that made her want to step backward and pretend this conversation had never started. Asterisk, I learned as a child. My family. Asterisk, Maya's hands hesitated, muscle memory fighting against years of carefully constructed walls. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes narrowing with focus. Then she signed something that made Maya's world tilt on its axis. Asterisk, show me your wrist. Asterisk. Maya's right hand instinctively moved to cover her left wrist, where a small scar ran in a distinctive pattern, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. A scar from a childhood accident that had required 17 stitches and left a mark that looked exactly like a crescent moon. Eleanor's hands began to shake as she signed. Asterisk, the little girl from the hospital. Room 237. You used to visit the children's ward and sign stories to the deaf kids while your mother was in treatment. Asterisk. The resignation letter in Maya's pocket suddenly felt like it was burning. The entire restaurant seemed to fade away as 20 years collapsed into this moment. Maya remembered room 237. She remembered the children's ward, the long nights sitting in hard plastic chairs. The way signing stories helped her forget about the chemotherapy and the monitors and the increasingly terrible news. She remembered a little deaf boy, maybe 8 years old, who taught her card games with his grandmother who visited every weekend. The grandmother with kind eyes who always brought extra cookies from the hospital cafeteria and who learned Maya's mother's treatment schedule, so she could time her visits to coincide with Maya's lonely vigils. Asterisk, Mrs. Chun? Asterisk, Maya's hands moved without conscious thought. Asterisk, you're David's grandmother. Asterisk. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table and grabbed her son's hand, pulling his attention to her as she began signing rapidly to Maya while speaking aloud, something she rarely did. This is the girl, James. The little girl I told you about from the hospital. The one who saved David's life. James Chun. The billionaire who'd been staring at his mother in frustrated confusion moments earlier, looked between them with growing comprehension and something that might have been awe. Saved his life? He asked quietly. Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet, the careful life she'd constructed threatening to crumble as the past rushed back. Because Eleanor was right. Maya had saved David's life, in a way that had cost her everything she thought she understood about herself. And Eleanor Chun wasn't just any grandmother from her past. She was the woman who'd whispered a secret to Maya the night before her mother died. A secret that Maya had spent 20 years trying to forget. A secret that, looking at James Chen's face now, she realized was about to change everything all over again. Asterisk, welcome to a story that will challenge everything you think you know about family, destiny, and the connections that bind us across time. Settle in, because what happens next will reveal just how powerful a simple act of kindness can become. Asterisk. Maya's legs threatened to give out. 20 years of carefully compartmentalized memories came flooding back. The antiseptic smell of hospital corridors, the weight of her mother's hand growing lighter each day, and the sound of David Chen's laughter echoing through the pediatric ward when she taught him to sign dirty jokes that scandalized the nurses. Asterisk, you remember David? Asterisk, Eleanor signed, tears streaming down her cheeks. Asterisk, my grandson? Asterisk. Of course she remembered. David had been her lifeline during the worst 6 months of her 15-year-old life. While her mother, Sarah, underwent aggressive chemotherapy for stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Maya had spent every day after school in that hospital. David's room became her refuge, a place where she could focus on someone else's struggles instead of watching her mother disappear piece by piece. James Chun was studying Maya with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You knew my nephew?" Nephew. The word hit Maya like a physical blow. She'd never known David's last name, hospital privacy policies, and the casual cruelty of a healthcare system that treated families like temporary inconveniences had kept that information locked away. But now, looking at James's face, she could see the resemblance. The same sharp cheekbones, the same dark eyes that David had inherited. David was born with congenital hearing loss, James continued, his voice softer now. But more than that, he was angry. Violent sometimes. He'd been kicked out of 2 schools, wouldn't cooperate with therapists, refused to learn sign language because he said it made him different. My mother spent months trying to connect with him. Eleanor picked up the story through sign and voice. Asterisk. Then this teenage girl appeared. Thin as a rail, eyes too old for her face, signing stories like she was weaving magic. David was fascinated by her. She was the first person who treated his deafness like a superpower instead of a disability. Asterisk. Maya remembered. She'd told David stories about deaf superheroes who could communicate silently, about how sign language was actually a secret code that hearing people were too limited to understand. She'd made up elaborate tales about the silent warriors who protected the world through their special abilities. David is a pediatric surgeon now, James said quietly. He specializes in cochlear implant surgery, but more importantly, he advocates for deaf children in medical settings. He credits you with saving his life. The restaurant around them seemed to blur. Maya could feel other diners watching, could sense Gerald hovering nearby with growing impatience, but all of that felt distant and unreal. But you disappeared, Eleanor signed. Asterisk, one day you were there, and the next day David's room was empty, and no one would tell us anything. We tried to find you. Asterisk. They tried to find her. The words hit harder than Maya expected. She'd spent 20 years convinced that her mother's death had gone unnoticed by anyone except the hospital billing department. To learn that someone had actually looked for her, had cared enough to search. My mother died, Maya said aloud, her hands stilling. April 15, 2005. Pancreatic cancer. After the funeral, I went to live with my aunt in Portland. I couldn't go back to that hospital. Eleanor reached across the table and covered Maya's hand with her own. The gesture was so gentle, so maternal, that Maya nearly broke down completely. Asterisk, I'm so sorry. Your mother was a beautiful woman. She talked about you constantly, how proud she was, how worried she was about leaving you alone. Asterisk. Maya's throat closed. Her mother had talked about her to Eleanor? During those final weeks when speaking had become difficult, when every breath was a struggle, her mother had used precious energy to tell a stranger about her daughter? Maya. James's voice carried a weight that made her look up. There's something else. Something my mother has been carrying for 20 years, and I think it's time you knew. Eleanor began signing rapidly, her movements sharp with old pain. Asterisk, the night before your mother died, she made me promise something. She said she had a secret about your father. Something she'd never told you because she thought it would complicate your life. But she was afraid of dying without you knowing the truth. Asterisk. Maya's world tilted. Her father was a mystery she'd stopped trying to solve years ago. Her mother had always claimed he was a college boyfriend who'd disappeared when he learned about the pregnancy. No name, no details, just a vague story about young love gone wrong. Asterisk. She made me promise that if I ever found you again, I would tell you the truth. She said you deserved to know where you came from. Asterisk. What truth? Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Eleanor glanced at James, who nodded almost imperceptibly. The gesture was so loaded with meaning that Maya felt panic rising in her chest. Asterisk, your father wasn't some random college student, Maya. Your mother worked as a translator for a medical conference in 2004. She met a young doctor there, a brilliant surgeon who was already making headlines for his innovative techniques. They had a brief relationship, just a few weeks, but when she realized she was pregnant, she also realized he was engaged to someone else. Someone from a prominent family who could advance his career. Asterisk. Maya's hands were shaking again. What are you saying? James cleared his throat. Maya, what my mother is trying to tell you is that your father is my older brother. Dr. Michael Chin. David's father. The words hit Maya like a physical assault. She grabbed the edge of the table, fighting waves of nausea as the implications crashed over her. Asterisk David wasn't just a sick child she'd helped. David was her half-brother, asterisk. Asterisk the Chin family wasn't just wealthy strangers. They were her family, asterisk. And James Chun, the billionaire sitting across from her, was her uncle. That's impossible, Maya whispered. My mother would have told me. She wouldn't have kept something like that secret. She was protecting you, Eleanor signed. Asterisk, Michael was already engaged to Patricia Holbrook, the pharmaceutical heiress. Their marriage was a business merger as much as a romance. Your mother thought revealing the truth would destroy his career and put you in danger from people who had billions of dollars to lose. Asterisk. Maya stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Every eye in the restaurant turned toward them, but she couldn't bring herself to care. This was too much, too fast, too completely destructive to everything she thought she knew about herself. I need to. I can't. Maya, wait. James stood as well, and for the first time his billionaire composure cracked. I know this is overwhelming, but... Overwhelming. Maya's voice carried across the dining room. I just found out that the child I helped save was my brother, that my entire life story is a lie, and that I'm apparently part of some family dynasty that never bothered to look for me when my mother was dying. Eleanor flinched as if she'd been slapped. That's not fair, James said quietly. We didn't know you existed. My brother never knew about you. But I knew, Eleanor signed, her face crumpling. Asterisk, I knew, and I kept the secret because your mother made me promise. I've been looking for you for 20 years, hoping I'd have the chance to tell you the truth. Asterisk. Maya stared at the woman who'd just upended her entire existence. Eleanor Chun, with her designer clothes and her billionaire son, had been carrying the secret of Maya's parentage for 2 decades. Had been searching for a waitress who'd been invisible to everyone else in the world. You knew, Maya repeated. You knew I was part of your family, and you let me struggle alone for 20 years. Asterisk, I didn't know how to find you. I tried, but you'd moved, and your mother's family wouldn't return my calls. Asterisk. Stop. Maya held up her hand. Just stop. Gerald appeared at her shoulder like a vulture sensing carrion. Ms. Rodriguez, you're causing a disturbance. I'm going to need you to. She's family, James said sharply, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made Gerald step backward. And if you have a problem with this conversation, I suggest you direct your concerns to me. Maya turned to stare at James. Family. He'd called her family. This stranger in an expensive suit had just claimed her as blood relation with more conviction than anyone had shown her in years. But instead of comfort, the word brought only rage. Don't, she said, her voice shaking. Don't you dare call me family. Family doesn't abandon each other. Family doesn't let children grow up in poverty while they build business empires. Family doesn't keep life-changing secrets for 20 years. Eleanor was sobbing now, her hands signing apologies that Maya couldn't bear to watch. Maya, please, James said. Let us explain. But Maya was already walking away, pushing through the dining room toward the employee exit, clutching the resignation letter in her pocket like a lifeline. Behind her, she could hear Gerald apologizing profusely to the Chun family, could feel the weight of every gaze in the restaurant following her retreat. She burst through the kitchen doors, past startled cooks and dishwashers, straight into the alley behind Meridian where she finally allowed herself to collapse against the brick wall and sob. 20 years of questions had just been answered in the most devastating way possible. She wasn't alone in the world. She was part of a family that had billions of dollars and had never bothered to find her. Her mother hadn't been abandoned by some careless college student. She'd been abandoned by a successful surgeon who'd chosen his career over taking responsibility for his child. And David, sweet David who'd laughed at her stories and taught her card games, was her half-brother. A brother who'd grown up with every advantage while she'd scraped by on minimum wage and student loans. Maya pulled out her phone with shaking hands. 3 missed calls from her roommate about rent. A text from her student loan servicer about a missed payment. An email about her overdue electric bill. The cruel irony wasn't lost on her. She'd just discovered she was related to billionaires, and she still couldn't afford to keep the lights on. The back door opened, and Gerald emerged, his face twisted with barely contained fury. What the hell was that, Rodriguez? Do you have any idea who those people are? James Chin could buy this restaurant with his pocket change, and you just humiliated him in front of half the city's elite. Maya laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. Actually, Gerald, I think I just discovered that James Chun is my uncle. Gerald's expression shifted from anger to confusion to calculating greed so quickly that Maya felt sick. Your uncle? You mean you're rich, connected, useful to you? Maya stood up, wiping her eyes. No, Gerald. I'm exactly the same broke waitress I was this morning. The only difference is that now I know why I've always felt like I didn't belong anywhere. She pulled the resignation letter from her pocket and held it out to him. I quit. Gerald stared at the resignation letter like it was written in a foreign language. You can't quit. Not today. Not after that scene. Watch me. Maya turned toward the alley exit, but Gerald grabbed her arm. Do you understand what you've just cost me? James Chin owns half the buildings in this district. One word from him, and I'm blacklisted from every decent restaurant in the city. Maya jerked free from his grip. That's not my problem anymore. Like hell it isn't. Gerald's voice turned vicious. You think you can waltz in here 'cause a scene with the most powerful family in the city and just disappear? I've got your address, your social security number, your emergency contacts. If my career gets destroyed because of your little family drama, I'll make sure you never work in food service again. The threat hit Maya like ice water. Food service was all she knew. The only industry where her lack of connections and college degree didn't automatically disqualify her. Gerald had the power to follow through on his threat, and they both knew it. Her phone buzzed. A text from her roommate Chloe. Asterisk just got off phone with landlord. Eviction notice goes out tomorrow if we don't have both halves of rent. Sorry, but I can't cover for you anymore. My parents will kill me if I get evicted. Asterisk. Maya stared at the message. 48 hours. She had 48 hours to come up with $800 or she'd be homeless. Having second thoughts? Gerald smirked. Because I might be willing to overlook today's incident if you get back in there and smooth things over with the Chin family. Maybe even ask them to put in a good word about the restaurant's service. The back door opened again, and James Chin stepped into the alley. His expensive suit looked ridiculously out of place against the dumpsters and graffiti-covered walls. Ms. Rodriguez? Could we speak privately? Gerald immediately shifted into obsequious mode. Mr. Chin, please accept my sincerest apologies for my employee's behavior. I assure you, this kind of unprofessional conduct is not tolerated at Meridian. Your former employee, James corrected quietly, and her behavior was perfectly understandable, considering the circumstances. His gaze fixed on Gerald with the kind of cold assessment that billionaires reserved for obstacles. I think you should go back inside now. It wasn't a suggestion. Gerald shot Maya a look that promised future retribution, but he couldn't afford to argue with James Chin. The moment the door closed behind him, Maya felt the weight of James's attention like a physical force. My mother is devastated, he said simply. She's been crying for 10 minutes straight, which is something I've seen exactly twice in my entire life. Good. The word came out harsher than Maya intended. She should be devastated. 20 years, and not one of you bothered to. Stop. James held up a hand. Before you finish that sentence, let me tell you what actually happened. Maya crossed her arms, but something in his tone made her listen. After you disappeared from the hospital, my mother hired 3 different private investigators to find you. She spent over $200,000 trying to track down Sarah Rodriguez's daughter. But your aunt changed your name when she took custody. You became Maya Chin. She used your father's surname, probably hoping it would help you connect with your heritage someday. Maya's breath caught. She'd never questioned why her last name didn't match her aunt's. Aunt Carol had told her it was to honor her mother's memory, but, you were looking for Maya Rodriguez, she whispered. For 20 years. My mother never stopped. She set up a trust fund in your name. It's been collecting interest since 2005. She funded a scholarship at your mother's hospital for families of cancer patients. She even bought the building where your mother's apartment used to be and turned it into affordable housing, hoping that somehow you'd find your way back to the neighborhood. Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet again. That's impossible. The Riverside Commons? Low-income housing development about 6 blocks from here. James's voice was gentle now. My mother built that in memory of Sarah Rodriguez. There's a plaque by the front entrance. Maya knew the building. She'd walked past it dozens of times on her way to work, always wondering how such a nice affordable housing complex had ended up in their gentrifying neighborhood. She'd even considered applying to live there, but the waiting list was years long. She built housing for people like me while I was struggling to make rent, Maya said, the irony bitter in her mouth. She built it for you. hoping you'd need it someday and find your way there. James stepped closer, and Maya could see exhaustion in his eyes. Maya, my mother has spent 20 years blaming herself for not fighting harder to find you before your mother died. She thinks if she'd tried harder, pushed more boundaries, maybe she could have convinced your mother to tell you the truth while there was still time. The anger that had been sustaining Maya began to crack. Why didn't she tell my mother she knew my father? Why keep it secret? Because my brother Michael was married to Patricia Holbrook by then. Their engagement was announced 2 weeks after your mother discovered she was pregnant. Eleanor knew that revealing Michael's affair, and his child, would destroy his marriage, his medical career, and potentially put you and your mother in danger from people with unlimited resources and no conscience. Maya thought about Patricia Holbrook, the pharmaceutical heiress whose family controlled half the medical patents in the country. The kind of woman who could make people disappear with a phone call. My mother made what she thought was the right choice, James continued. Keep the secret, protect everyone involved, and try to help from the shadows. She's been waiting 20 years for the chance to make it right. And my father? Dr. Michael Chin? Does he know now? James's expression darkened. That's where things get complicated. Maya's phone rang, startling them both. Chloe's name flashed on the screen. Maya almost ignored it, but something in James's expression made her answer. Chloe. Maya, thank God. Where are you? There are men here asking about you. They say they're lawyers, but they feel more like, I don't know, investigators? They're asking about your family, your mother, where you went to school. I didn't tell them anything, but Maya, I'm scared. They said they represent someone who has an interest in your welfare, but they won't say who. Maya's blood turned to ice. She looked at James, who had gone very still. Chloe, don't answer any more questions. Don't let them in the apartment. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Maya, who are these people? I don't know. Just be careful. Maya hung up and turned to James with growing alarm. You said my father doesn't know about me. So who's sending lawyers to question my roommate? James pulled out his phone and dialed rapidly. Marcus? I need security at Maya Rodriguez's apartment address immediately. Assume hostile surveillance. He paused, listening. No, not my security. Someone else's. He hung up and faced Maya with an expression that made her stomach drop. There's something I didn't tell you. Michael knows about you now. I told him an hour ago. But so does his wife Patricia. And Patricia Holbrookson doesn't leave loose ends. What does that mean? It means that 20 minutes ago, you were a secret that 3 people in the world knew. Now you're a threat to a pharmaceutical dynasty worth $15 billion. Patricia has been grooming their son, your half-brother David's cousin, to inherit Michael's medical legacy and her family's business empire. Your existence complicates that inheritance in ways she won't tolerate. Maya felt the walls of the alley closing in. You're saying she wants to hurt me? I'm saying she wants to control the narrative. And Patricia's methods of control have historically been permanent. The resignation letter was still crumpled in Maya's hand. 48 hours ago, her biggest problem had been making rent. Now she was apparently caught in a billionaire family war that could get her killed. Why are you telling me this? She asked. If your family has so much to lose, why warn me? James stepped closer, and for the first time, his billionaire composure completely cracked. Because 20 years ago, my nephew David was a broken, angry child who thought the world hated him. You saved him, not just his life, but his soul. You gave him hope and purpose and the strength to become an incredible man. Your family, Maya, and I don't abandon family. Maya stared at him. Even if protecting me destroys your brother's marriage? Costs your family billions of dollars? Ruins everything you've built. Eleanor raised me to believe that some things matter more than money. James's voice was steady, but Maya could see the fear in his eyes. But Maya, you need to understand what you're facing. If you want to claim your place in this family, if you want to know your father and brother, if you want access to the resources that are rightfully yours, you're going to have to survive Patricia Holbrookson first. Maya's phone buzzed with another text from Chloe. Asterisk, they're still here. Pacing outside the building now. Maya, I'm really scared. Asterisk. 48 hours to make rent. A vengeful billionaire who wanted her silenced, and a family that could either save her or destroy her completely. Maya looked at the resignation letter in her hand. The letter that was supposed to be her escape from a life of invisible servitude. Instead, quitting her job had just painted a target on her back and forced her into a game where the stakes were life and death. What do you need me to do? She asked. James smiled grimly. First, we get you somewhere safe. Then we call my brother and arrange a family meeting that's 20 years overdue. Maya nodded, crumpling the resignation letter one final time before letting it fall to the alley floor. There was no going back now. No returning to the safety of anonymity and minimum wage invisibility. She was Maya Chun, daughter of a prominent surgeon, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune, and the secret that could destroy one of the most powerful families in the country. The only question now was whether she'd survive long enough to decide what to do with that power. The Chun family compound sat behind 12-foot gates in the most exclusive neighborhood Maya had ever seen. Even through the bulletproof glass of James's sedan, she could feel the weight of old money and older secrets pressing down on her like a physical force. "This is temporary," James said as they passed through the second security checkpoint. "Just until we can assess the threat level." Maya watched armed guards conduct a sweep of their vehicle with the kind of efficiency that suggested this wasn't the first time the Chin family had faced dangerous enemies. "How often do you need this level of security?" "More often than I'd like. When you control patents for life-saving medications, you make enemies." James's phone buzzed constantly. Updates from his security team, messages from lawyers, calls from people whose names Maya recognized from business magazines. "Patricia's people withdrew from your apartment building 20 minutes ago, but they've been replaced by a surveillance team that's trying very hard to look invisible." Maya's stomach clenched. "Chloe. Safe. My security chief Marcus pulled her out through the building's basement, and she's staying at a hotel under an assumed name. Patricia's people think she's still in the apartment." The sedan pulled up to a mansion that looked like it belonged in a museum. All glass and steel and architectural impossibilities that screamed wealth beyond imagination. But what caught Maya's attention wasn't the building. It was the man standing on the front steps. Dr. Michael Chin looked exactly like an older version of David, with the same dark eyes and sharp cheekbones that Maya saw in her own reflection. He was tall, distinguished, wearing scrubs under a lab coat that suggested he'd come straight from surgery. But it was the expression on his face that made Maya's breath catch. A combination of wonder, guilt, and fear that she recognized from her own mirror. "He's been pacing for an hour," James murmured. "I've never seen him this nervous, not even before his first heart transplant." Maya's hands shook as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "What do I say to him?" "Whatever feels right. He's waited 23 years for this conversation." The sedan door opened, and Maya found herself face to face with the father who'd never known she existed. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the driveway, two strangers connected by blood and separated by decades of secrets. Then Michael Chin stepped forward, and Maya could see tears in his eyes. "You have your mother's smile," he said quietly. "Sarah always lit up a room when she was happy." Maya's throat closed. "You remember her. Every day." Michael's voice carried 20 years of regret. "She was brilliant, kind funny. I was an idiot kid who thought career advancement mattered more than everything else. I've regretted losing her every day since." "You didn't lose her," Maya said, anger flaring. "You abandoned her." Michael flinched as if she'd slapped him. "You're right. I did. I was engaged to Patricia. The wedding was planned. Our families had already merged business interests. When Sarah told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I chose the easy path instead of the right one." A second car pulled through the gates, and Maya watched a younger man emerge. Tall, athletic, with kind eyes and the confident posture of someone used to high-pressure situations. He wore scrubs similar to Michael's, and moved with the precise grace of a surgeon. "That's Dr. Alex Rivera," James said quietly. "Michael's research partner, and one of the few people we trust completely. He's also David's closest friend." Maya watched Alex approach, noting the way his gaze swept the compound's perimeter with practiced wariness. "Is everyone in your family paranoid?" "The smart ones are," Michael answered. "Alex has been running security protocols at the medical center since we learned about Patricia's interest in you. He's also been coordinating with David, who's flying in from Boston tonight." Maya felt another jolt. "David's coming here?" "Your brother wants to meet you properly," Alex said, his voice warm with barely contained excitement. "He's been talking nonstop about the girl who saved his life. He never stopped hoping he'd find you again." The front door opened, and Eleanor emerged, her eyes red from crying but her face determined. Behind her walked a woman who made Maya's blood freeze. Patricia Holbrookshire was elegant in the way that only unlimited money could achieve. Perfect blonde hair, designer clothes that probably cost more than Maya's annual salary, and ice-blue eyes that assessed Maya like she was calculating her net worth and threat level simultaneously. "So this is the surprise daughter," Patricia said, her voice carrying the kind of cultured authority that suggested she was used to being obeyed without question. "You look remarkably like your mother." Maya noticed the emphasis on your mother, a subtle reminder that Sarah Rodriguez had been the other woman, the temporary distraction who'd complicated Patricia's perfectly planned life. "Patricia," Michael warned, his voice tight with strain. "Oh, please, Michael. Let's not pretend this is a happy family reunion." Patricia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Maya, dear, I'm sure this is all very overwhelming. Meeting your father, discovering your heritage, learning about the family you never knew you had. It must be tempting to want to claim your place in all of this." Maya met Patricia's gaze steadily. "Should I not want that? Of course you should. It's only natural." Patricia's smile sharpened. "But I hope you understand that families like ours come with responsibilities. Obligations. The kind of scrutiny that can destroy people who aren't prepared for it." Alex stepped closer to Maya, and she caught the scent of his cologne mixed with hospital antiseptic. "Patricia, I think we should focus on keeping Maya safe, rather than making her feel unwelcome." "Unwelcome?" Patricia laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Dr. Rivera, I would never dream of making family feel unwelcome. I'm simply being realistic about what Maya's emergence means for all of us." James's phone rang, and his expression darkened as he answered. "What do you mean they're gone?" A pause. "How does an entire surveillance team just disappear?" Another pause, longer this time. "Find them. Now." He hung up and turned to the group with barely contained alarm. "Patricia's people have vanished. All of them. Surveillance, the team watching Chloe's hotel, even the lawyers who were asking questions around the city. They've all gone dark." Patricia's smile widened. "How strange. Perhaps they've completed their task." "What task?" Maya demanded. Before Patricia could answer, Alex's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and went very still. "We need to get everyone inside. Now." "What is it?" Michael asked. Text message from an unknown number. It says, "Dr. Rivera, you have something that belongs to us. Return it within 6 hours or we'll take it back ourselves." Maya felt ice in her veins. "They mean me." "No," Eleanor said firmly, signing as she spoke. "They mean us. All of us." "Patricia, what have you done?" Patricia's mask of civilized politeness finally slipped, revealing something much more dangerous underneath. "I've protected this family for 23 years. I've built an empire, secured our legacy, and eliminated every threat to our success. I'm not going to let one illegitimate daughter destroy everything I've sacrificed for." Michael stepped between Patricia and Maya, his voice deadly quiet. "She's my daughter, Patricia. Our daughter now by marriage. She's a complication that needs to be resolved." Patricia's voice was ice-cold now. "Maya, dear, I'm going to give you one chance to make this easy on everyone. I'll give you $5 million. Enough to disappear permanently and start a new life anywhere in the world. All you have to do is sign a document stating that you have no claim to the Chin family name, fortune, or legacy." Maya stared at her. "And if I refuse? Then you'll discover that accidents happen to people who threaten pharmaceutical dynasties. Car crashes, medical errors, random street crimes. The world is full of dangers for young women who don't have powerful families to protect them." Alex moved closer to Maya, his presence solid and reassuring. "She's not alone anymore, Patricia. She has family now." "Does she?" Patricia's smile was sharp as a blade. "Michael, are you really willing to destroy your marriage, your medical career, and your son's inheritance for a daughter you've known for less than 2 hours? James, are you prepared to lose half your business empire in a divorce that will make headlines for months? Eleanor, will you sacrifice your grandson David's future for a girl who's been surviving just fine without you for 20 years? The silence that followed was deafening. Maya could see the doubt creeping into their faces, the weight of Patricia's threats settling over them like poison gas. Michael started, then stopped, his face anguished. Maya felt something die inside her chest. These people had millions of dollars, unlimited resources, more power than she'd ever dreamed of, and they were still afraid of one pharmaceutical heiress. She was just a broke waitress who'd stumbled into their world by accident. What chance did she have against someone who could make entire surveillance teams disappear? "I'll take the money," she said quietly. Alex spun to face her, his eyes wide with shock. "Maya, no. You can't. $5 million is more than I could earn in 10 lifetimes, Maya continued, her voice steady despite the screaming in her head. I can pay for college, start my cafe, help Chloe with her student loans. I can have a real life instead of fighting a war I can't win. Eleanor began crying again, her hands signing desperate protests that Maya couldn't bear to watch. A wise choice, Patricia said, pulling out her phone. I'll have the papers drawn up within the hour. But then Alex did something unexpected. He reached for Maya's hand, his fingers intertwining with hers, and leaned close enough to whisper in her ear. Trust me, David's not flying in from Boston. He's been here for 2 hours, coordinating with federal investigators. Patricia's pharmaceutical patents are under investigation for price fixing and fraud. This isn't about protecting the family legacy. This is about keeping Patricia out of prison. Maya's heart stopped. Federal investigators? Price-fixing fraud? She looked at Patricia's confident smile and realized that the woman wasn't just threatening Maya to protect her family's reputation. She was threatening Maya because Maya's existence could trigger an investigation that would expose decades of criminal activity. Which meant Maya wasn't just a complication to be resolved. She was a witness who could bring down a $15 billion criminal empire. And Patricia Holbrookson didn't leave witnesses alive. Maya squeezed Alex's hand and made her choice. Actually, Patricia, I've changed my mind. I think I'd like to get to know my family better before I make any permanent decisions. Patricia's smile disappeared completely, replaced by something cold and predatory. I was hoping you'd be smarter than that, my dear. Dr. Rivera, she said without taking her eyes off Maya, I believe it's time to implement contingency protocols. Alex stepped in front of Maya, his body tense with readiness. Patricia, whatever you're planning. What I'm planning, Dr. Rivera, is to protect my family from a threat that clearly has no intention of being reasonable. Patricia raised her phone. Security Team Alpha, implement extraction protocols. Target is non-compliant. Maya heard the compound's alarms begin to wail as armed men in tactical gear emerged from vehicles that had somehow bypassed the Chin family's security completely. They weren't federal investigators. They were Patricia's private army, and they'd been waiting inside the compound's perimeter all along. Maya wasn't just trapped in a pressure cooker of family politics and billionaire threats. She was trapped in a fortress that had just become her prison. The tactical team moved with military precision, surrounding the group in seconds. Maya found herself pressed against Alex's back as he positioned himself between her and the advancing men. But something felt wrong. His posture was too relaxed, his breathing too steady for someone facing armed attackers. Patricia, call them off, Michael demanded, his voice sharp with authority. This is insane. What's insane, Michael, is that you've allowed this charade to continue for as long as you have. Patricia's voice carried a different quality now, cold, calculating, and completely in control. Did you really think I wasn't prepared for this contingency? Eleanor was signing frantically, her hands shaking. Asterisk, something's wrong. This isn't how family protects family. Asterisk. James had his phone out, but Maya noticed that none of the tactical team seemed concerned about him calling for help. In fact, they looked like they were waiting for something. Alex, Maya whispered, do something. Call the police, call your security team, call someone. Alex turned to face her, and Maya's blood turned to ice. The concern and protectiveness that had been in his eyes moments before was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like pity. I'm sorry, Maya, he said quietly. I really am. Maya stepped backward, but there was nowhere to go. What are you talking about? Dr. Rivera has been very helpful in orchestrating this evening's events, Patricia said, her smile returning. You see, dear, when we learned about your existence, we needed to assess whether you were simply a naive girl who could be bought off, or a potential threat who might require more permanent solutions. Maya's mind reeled. Alex works for you? Dr. Rivera works for me, Patricia corrected. He has for the past 3 years. Ever since I discovered that Michael was conducting unauthorized research using my family's pharmaceutical patents. Research that could have cost us billions in licensing fees. Michael's face went white. Alex, is this true? Alex had the grace to look uncomfortable, but he didn't deny it. Patricia discovered your off-books research 18 months ago, Michael. The experimental treatments you've been developing for childhood cancer. Treatments that should have been licensed through Holbrook Pharmaceuticals at standard industry rates. Maya felt the ground disappearing beneath her feet. You've been lying to me this entire time? Not lying, Alex said. Just managing information. We needed to know how you'd react to learning about the family, whether you'd be content with a payoff or if you'd want to dig deeper into the Chun family business practices. Eleanor's hands were moving rapidly. Asterisk, he's been reporting everything we said, everything we planned. This whole reunion has been a setup. Asterisk. But the federal investigation, Maya started. Doesn't exist, Patricia finished. That was Alex's idea. Give you something to feel brave about, make you think refusing my offer was heroic instead of stupid. We needed you to reveal your true intentions. Maya turned to stare at Alex, the man she'd been developing feelings for, the man who'd made her feel protected and valued. You made me trust you. I know. Alex's voice was genuinely pained. And I want you to know that I didn't expect. I mean, getting to know you wasn't supposed to. Wasn't supposed to what? Maya's voice was deadly quiet. He wasn't supposed to develop feelings for you, Patricia said, her tone suggesting this was a disappointing complication. But Dr. Rivera has always been sentimental about lost causes. Alex flinched. Patricia, that's enough. Is it? Patricia stepped closer to Maya, her ice-blue eyes glittering with satisfaction. Because I think Maya deserves to know the full truth before we proceed. Don't you think she should know about the DNA test results? Maya's stomach dropped. What DNA test results? Michael looked confused. What is she talking about, Patricia? The DNA test I had Alex conduct using the water glass Maya drank from at the restaurant, Patricia said. The test that proves Maya Rodriguez is not, in fact, your daughter, Michael. The world stopped. Maya heard Eleanor gasp, saw James's face go slack with shock, watched Michael stumble backward as if he'd been physically struck. That's impossible, Michael whispered. The timing, the hospital, Sarah and I were together. Sarah Rodriguez was indeed at the medical conference where you met, Patricia continued relentlessly. But she was also romantically involved with Dr. Robert Martinez, the conference organizer. A relationship that continued for several weeks after her brief encounter with you, Michael. Maya couldn't breathe. You're lying. The DNA doesn't lie, dear. You're not a Chun. You never were. Patricia's smile was triumphant. You're the daughter of a moderately successful physician who died in a car accident when you were 12. Your mother simply chose to believe you were Michael's child because it was a more romantic story than admitting she wasn't sure who your father was. Eleanor's signing had become desperate. Asterisk, no, this can't be true. I knew your mother. I saw the resemblance. Asterisk. What you saw, Patricia said, glancing at Eleanor, was what you wanted to see. A lonely old woman's fantasy about reuniting with a lost child. Maya turned to Alex, searching his face for any sign that this was a lie, that Patricia was manipulating them all. But Alex wouldn't meet her eyes. The DNA test is real, he said quietly. I'm sorry, Maya. You're not Michael's daughter. Maya felt something fundamental shatter inside her chest. 24 hours ago, she'd been nobody, a broke waitress with no family and no prospects. For a few brief hours, she'd been part of something larger, connected to people who cared about her, heir to a legacy that gave her life meaning. Now she was nobody again. Worse than nobody. She was a stranger who'd stumbled into a family tragedy and convinced herself she belonged. So what was this? Maya's voice came out as a whisper. Some elaborate psychological experiment? Initially, yes, Patricia admitted. When Eleanor told us about the girl from the hospital, I needed to determine whether you represented a threat to our family's reputation. A young woman claiming to be Michael's illegitimate daughter could cause scandal, trigger investigations, complicate inheritance issues. But I'm not his daughter. No, but you didn't know that. And you were clearly prepared to fight for your place in this family, which made you dangerous in a different way. Patricia gestured to the tactical team. People who are willing to fight for things they don't deserve have a tendency to become persistent problems. Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her. Michael appeared devastated, Eleanor was crying, James looked stunned, and Alex. Alex looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. You could have just told me the truth, Maya said. You could have shown me the DNA results, and I would have left. Could we? Patricia raised an eyebrow. You'd already demonstrated poor judgment by refusing my initial offer. And you'd seen too much, learned too much about our family's business practices. Even if you weren't Michael's daughter, you still represented a security risk. Maya felt the full weight of her situation crashing down. She wasn't family. She had no protection, no resources, no allies. Alex had been lying to her. Patricia wanted her silenced. And the Chun family had no reason to protect a stranger who'd accidentally stumbled into their private affairs. What happens now? She asked. Patricia's smile was genuinely warm for the first time all evening. Now, dear, you're going to have a tragic accident. A young woman, distraught over recent revelations about her parentage, takes her own life. Very sad, very understandable, very final. Alex stepped forward suddenly, his face pale. Patricia, we agreed on relocation, not. We agreed on problem resolution, Dr. Rivera. And Maya has made it clear that she's not the type to stay quiet and disappear. Patricia's voice turned ice cold. Besides, she knows too much about Michael's research, about our family's business practices, about things that could destroy everything we've built. Maya backed toward the edge of the compound's driveway, her mind racing. The gates were locked, the guards were Patricia's people, and even if she could somehow escape, where would she go? She had no money, no family, no one who would believe her story about pharmaceutical conspiracies and billionaire death threats. There is one alternative, Patricia said, as if reading her thoughts. Alex has developed quite an attachment to you, despite his professional obligations. I could be persuaded to let you live, under certain conditions. Maya turned to stare at Alex, who was looking at Patricia with growing horror. What conditions? Maya asked, though she was afraid she already knew. Marriage to Dr. Rivera, of course. A lovely ceremony, a comfortable life, and Dr. Rivera's personal guarantee that you'll never speak about tonight's events to anyone. Patricia's smile was razor-sharp. Think of it as a very exclusive witness protection program. Alex was shaking his head. Patricia, no. I won't be party to. To what, Dr. Rivera? Saving her life? Offering her a future? Protecting her from the consequences of her own poor choices. Patricia's voice carried absolute authority. You're already party to everything that's happened tonight. The question is whether you're going to help me solve this problem permanently, or temporarily. Maya understood the choice she was being offered. Marriage to a man who'd betrayed her trust, or death disguised as suicide. Both options meant the end of her freedom, the end of any hope she'd had for building a real life. But looking at Alex's face, she realized there was something Patricia didn't know. Alex Rivera wasn't just conflicted about his assignment. He was genuinely in love with her. And that gave Maya the first real weapon she'd had all evening. Alex, she said quietly, stepping closer to him. Look at me. He raised his eyes to meet hers, and Maya saw the war raging behind them. Is this who you want to be? She asked. Is this the man you wanted to become when you decided to save lives as a doctor? For a moment, the compound was silent except for the hum of tactical equipment and Eleanor's quiet sobbing. Then Alex made his choice. Security team, stand down, he said, his voice carrying sudden authority. The tactical team members looked at each other in confusion. Dr. Rivera, Patricia's voice was dangerously quiet. You seem to be forgetting who's in charge here. Actually, Patricia, Alex said, pulling out his phone. I think you're forgetting something important. He held up the device, and Maya could see a recording app that had been running for the past 20 minutes. Federal investigators might not have been involved before tonight, Alex said, but they're going to be very interested in a recording of you threatening to murder a civilian and ordering tactical teams to stage a suicide. Patricia's mask of control finally cracked completely, revealing something feral and desperate underneath. You have no idea what you've just done, she hissed. I've chosen the right side, Alex replied. Finally. But even as Maya felt a surge of hope, she realized their victory was temporary. Patricia Holbrookshire had $15 billion, unlimited resources, and decades of experience making problems disappear. One recording wasn't going to stop her. It was only going to make her more desperate. And desperate billionaires, Maya was learning, were the most dangerous kind. The recording app on Alex's phone might as well have been a declaration of war. Patricia stared at the device with the focused intensity of a predator calculating attack angles, while her tactical team remained frozen in confusion, unsure whether to follow her orders or Alex's contradictory commands. You've made a catastrophic error, Dr. Rivera, Patricia said, her voice carrying deadly calm. That recording will never see the inside of a courtroom. Alex kept the phone raised, but Maya could see his hands shaking. Patricia, it's over. Accept it. Over? Patricia laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Child, this is just beginning. She raised her own phone and spoke into it with crisp authority. Execute Protocol 7. All assets, all targets, immediate implementation. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. What's Protocol 7? Before anyone could answer, explosions echoed from the direction of the compound's main gate. Emergency lights began flashing, and Maya could hear the distant sound of gunfire. "My security team," James said, his face going pale as he checked his phone. "They're under attack. Multiple vehicles, military-grade weapons." Eleanor's hands moved frantically. Asterisk, she's going to kill everyone. Everyone who knows about tonight. Asterisk. Maya turned to stare at Patricia with growing horror. "You're going to murder your own family?" "I'm going to protect my empire from threats, both internal and external," Patricia replied coldly. "Michael's unauthorized research has already cost us hundreds of millions in potential revenue. James's sentimental attachment to lost causes has made him a liability. And Eleanor, well, Eleanor has served her purpose." Michael stepped forward, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. "Patricia, these are our children, our family. This is business, Michael. Something you never understood." Patricia's expression was glacial. "Did you really think I'd let you destroy everything I've built for the sake of some misguided medical ethics? Your experimental cancer treatments threaten patent monopolies worth billions." Maya felt the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. The children's ward. David's treatment. "You've been using sick kids as test subjects for illegal drug trials." "We've been advancing medical science using available resources," Patricia corrected. "The fact that those resources happen to include pediatric cancer patients is simply efficient utilization of research opportunities." Alex's face had gone white. "Patricia, that's not what we agreed. You told me the research was legitimate, that we were developing affordable treatments. What we're developing, Dr. Rivera, is controlled scarcity. Treatments effective enough to maintain hope, expensive enough to ensure maximum profit margins." Patricia's mask had completely fallen away now, revealing something monstrous underneath. "Did you really think a pharmaceutical dynasty was built on charity?" Maya realized with crystal clarity that she wasn't just caught in a family dispute. She was trapped in the middle of a criminal conspiracy that had been using dying children as test subjects while deliberately keeping life-saving treatments out of reach for families who couldn't afford them. The gunfire outside was getting closer. "We have to get out of here," Alex said, grabbing Maya's hand. "Now." But Patricia's tactical team had finally received clear orders. They moved to block all exits from the courtyard, weapons raised and ready. "Nobody leaves," Patricia announced. "Protocol 7 includes eliminating all witnesses to tonight's events. Michael, James, Eleanor, you've all heard too much to be allowed to return to your normal lives." Eleanor was crying as she signed. Asterisk, 20 years I searched for Maya, and now we're all going to die because I couldn't leave the past alone. Asterisk. Maya felt rage building in her chest. Not the helpless anger of someone trapped, but the cold fury of someone who'd finally seen the true enemy. "You evil, manipulative." "Practical," Patricia interrupted. "Evil is a luxury for people who can afford moral absolutes. I've built an empire that employs thousands, funds medical research, and maintains the economic stability that allows people like you to have your comfortable little moral certainties." The sound of approaching helicopters filled the air, and Maya realized Patricia's resources went far beyond a few tactical teams. This was a military-level operation designed to eliminate every trace of tonight's events. "Maya," Alex whispered urgently, "the service tunnel. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs under the compound. It connects to the city's storm drain system." Maya looked around desperately. Michael was arguing with Patricia, his voice raised in fury as he demanded she call off the attack. James was trying to coordinate with his remaining security personnel. Eleanor had collapsed into a chair, her hands shaking too violently to sign coherently. They were a family destroying itself, and Maya was the catalyst that had triggered the explosion. "I can't leave them," Maya said. "You can't save them," Alex replied harshly. "Patricia's right about one thing. This was always going to end this way. The research scandal, the patent violations, the illegal trials, it was all going to come out eventually. We're just the convenient excuse for cleaning house." Maya stared at him, seeing the man who'd betrayed her, lied to her, manipulated her emotions for months. But also seeing the man who was now willing to throw away his career, his safety, everything he'd built to protect her. "Why?" she asked. "Why risk everything for someone you've been lying to?" Alex's expression was raw with pain. "Because somewhere between monitoring you and reporting on you, I fell in love with the person you actually are. Not the potential threat Patricia saw, not the lost heiress the Chin family wanted, but Maya Rodriguez, the woman who spends her breaks signing with deaf customers, who saves every penny to help her roommate with student loans, who refused $5 million because she thought it meant betraying people she'd known for 2 hours. Maya felt her heart breaking even as gunfire erupted closer to the main house. It doesn't matter. I'm not even Maya Chin. I'm nobody, with no family, no money, no reason for anyone to protect me. You're the woman I love, Alex said simply. That's reason enough. Patricia's voice cut through their conversation like a blade. How touching. Dr. Rivera, you have 30 seconds to step away from the girl before my team resolves this situation permanently. Maya looked around the courtyard one final time. Michael was still arguing desperately with Patricia, trying to appeal to whatever humanity might remain in the woman he'd been married to for 20 years. James was coordinating evacuation routes that would never work against Patricia's superior firepower. Eleanor was signing prayers that no one would answer. They were good people trapped in an impossible situation, and Maya's presence had signed their death warrants. Go, she told Alex. Take the tunnel. Get out of here. Not without you. Yes, without me. Maya's voice was steady now, filled with a calm that surprised her. I'm the reason Patricia's doing this. I'm the threat she needs to eliminate. If I'm not here, maybe she'll let the rest of them live. Alex stared at her in horror. Maya, no. You can't sacrifice yourself for people who aren't even my family? For people I met 6 hours ago. Maya's laugh held no humor. Maybe not. But Eleanor spent 20 years looking for someone who didn't exist. Michael spent his career trying to save children with experimental treatments. James protected me from Patricia, even though it meant risking everything he'd built. They're better people than I am, Alex. They deserve to survive this. And you don't. Maya thought about her life, the endless parade of minimum wage jobs, the constant struggle to afford basic necessities, the student loans that grew larger every month, the dreams of opening a cafe that felt more impossible each year. She thought about the resignation letter she'd dropped in the alley behind Meridian, and the relief she'd felt at the prospect of escaping a life that had never felt like it belonged to her. I was drowning before I met you, she said quietly. At least this way, my death might mean something. The helicopters were directly overhead now, and Maya could see armed figures rappelling toward the compound. Patricia's final solution was arriving, and there would be no escape for any of them. Alex grabbed her face in his hands, his eyes desperate. Maya, listen to me. You are not nobody. You saved David's life when you were 15 years old. You've been supporting your roommate, helping deaf customers, surviving on your own for years. You matter. Not because of who your father is or isn't, not because of what family claims you, but because of who you choose to be. Maya felt tears streaming down her face. It's too late, Alex. Even if we escape, Patricia will never stop hunting us. We'll spend the rest of our lives running, hiding, looking over our shoulders. That's not a life, that's just delayed execution. The tactical team was advancing, their weapons raised, Patricia's final orders clear in their movements. Maya made her choice. She kissed Alex once, pouring all the love and regret and desperate hope she felt into that single moment of connection. Then she stepped away from him, toward Patricia and her advancing soldiers. I'll go with you, she called out. But you let them live. All of them. The Chin family, Alex, everyone. I'm the one you really want, the witness who could destroy everything. Take me, and let them go. Patricia smiled with genuine satisfaction. Finally, a reasonable negotiation. But as Maya walked toward what she was certain would be her death, she heard Alex's voice behind her, broken and desperate. Maya, wait. There's something else you need to know about the DNA test. She turned back, and the expression on his face made her blood freeze. What? The DNA sample I tested, it wasn't yours. The world stopped spinning. What do you mean it wasn't mine? Alex's voice was barely a whisper. Patricia switched the samples. You are Michael's daughter. You always were. She faked the test results to break your connection to the family, to make you believe you had no one to protect you. Maya felt reality fracturing around her. She was a Chin. She did belong to this family. Everything Patricia had said about her mother, about her parentage, about her worthlessness, all lies designed to isolate her and break her spirit, which meant she just offered to sacrifice herself to save the family that was actually hers. And Patricia Holbrookshire had just revealed that she was willing to murder her own stepdaughter to protect her criminal empire. The tactical team raised their weapons as Maya stood frozen between two impossible truths. She finally had the family she'd always wanted, and they were all about to die because of it. Maya stood frozen in the space between truth and destruction, her mind reeling from Alex's revelation. She was Michael's daughter. She belonged to this family. Patricia had orchestrated an elaborate psychological manipulation to convince her she was worthless, alone, undeserving of protection. "You faked the DNA test," Maya said, her voice cutting through the sound of approaching helicopters like a blade. Patricia's smile never wavered. "I told you, dear. I protect my investments." The Chun family empire was never going to be destroyed by one sentimental surgeon's illegitimate daughter. "She's not illegitimate," Michael stepped forward, his voice carrying decades of surgical authority. "She's my child. Our child by law and by choice." Maya felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. For 23 years, she'd carried the weight of being unwanted, unclaimed, invisible to the world. She'd built her entire identity around the belief that she didn't matter enough for anyone to fight for her. But looking at Michael's face, her father's face, she saw reflected back the same desperate protectiveness she'd felt for David in that hospital room 20 years ago. The same love that had driven her to tell stories to a frightened deaf boy while her own world crumbled around her. She wasn't powerless. She'd never been powerless. She was Sarah Rodriguez's daughter, who'd fought stage for cancer with grace and dignity. She was the girl who'd saved David Chen's spirit when medical professionals had given up on reaching him. She was the woman who'd spent years surviving on her own, helping others even when she could barely help herself. And now she was a Chun, with all the responsibility that entailed. "Eleanor," Maya called out, her hands moving in sign language with sudden, fierce precision. Asterisk. "You said my mother made you promise to tell me the truth. What else did she make you promise?" Asterisk. Eleanor looked up from her chair, tears streaming down her face, but her hands responded automatically. Asterisk, to protect you. No matter what the cost. She said the Chin family would either save you or destroy you, but that the choice had to be yours. Asterisk. Maya turned to face Patricia's advancing tactical team, but instead of fear, she felt the cold clarity that came with finally understanding who she was meant to be. "Alex," she said without turning around, "how many people does Patricia have?" 12-man tactical team, 3 helicopters, maybe 20 additional personnel," Alex replied, his voice tight with confusion. "Maya, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that Patricia made one critical error." Maya's voice carried a new quality, not the desperate pleading of a trapped victim, but the calm authority of someone who'd found her power. "She assumed I'd be easy to break because I've been surviving alone. But I haven't been alone." She turned to face her family, because that's what they were now, she realized. Not the fantasy family she'd dreamed of, but the real, complicated, flawed people who'd chosen to stand with her when it mattered. "James, how many emergency protocols does this compound have?" James's eyes widened as he caught her meaning. 17 different scenarios, including chemical attack, armed invasion, and family extraction. Which ones put Patricia at a disadvantage? The compound lockdown protocol isolates all sections, cutting off external communication and trapping any hostiles inside while... James stopped, staring at Maya with growing amazement. "You want to lock her in here with us? I want to level the playing field." Maya's hands were steady now, her voice clear. "Patricia's advantage is resources, mobility, the ability to call in reinforcements. Take that away, and what does she have? 12 armed professionals against 6 civilians?" Michael's voice carried both admiration and concern. "Maya, this isn't a movie. We can't fight our way out of this." "We don't fight our way out," Maya replied. "We make her come to us. On our terms, in our territory, with the whole world watching." Eleanor's hands moved rapidly. Asterisk the security cameras. "Everything's been recorded. If we can get the footage out, asterisk." "Not just the footage," Maya interrupted, her mind racing with possibilities. "Alex, you said federal investigators aren't involved yet. What would it take to get them involved?" Alex stared at her for a moment, then his expression shifted to something like awe. "A credible report of pharmaceutical fraud involving pediatric patients. If we could document Patricia's illegal research programs." "The compound servers," James said, catching on quickly. "All of Patricia's research data, all the financial records, everything she's been hiding, it's all stored in the compound's secure servers." Maya felt the pieces clicking into place. "So we lock down the compound, access the servers, broadcast everything live to federal authorities, and force Patricia to explain her criminal enterprise in front of the whole world. That's..." Michael paused, calculating odds. "That's actually brilliant. But Maya, even if it works, Patricia's people will try to stop us. This compound could become a battlefield." Maya looked around at the faces of her family, her real family, who'd known her for hours but were willing to risk everything to protect her. Eleanor, who'd spent 20 years searching for a promise she'd made to a dying woman. Michael, who was staring at his daughter with the kind of wonder usually reserved for medical miracles. James, whose entire business empire was at stake, but who'd never wavered in his support. And Alex, who'd thrown away his career and safety for a woman he'd fallen in love with against all logic. "Then we make sure it's a battle we can win," Maya said. Patricia's voice cut across the courtyard, sharp with impatience. "Enough conversation. Dr. Rivera, step away from the girl now, or my team will move in." Maya turned to face Patricia one last time, but instead of the frightened, desperate victim Patricia expected, she saw something that made the pharmaceutical heiress take a step backward. Maya Chin was smiling. "Patricia," Maya called out, her voice carrying across the compound with perfect clarity. "I want to thank you." "Thank me?" Patricia's confidence flickered for the first time. "For showing me exactly who I am." Maya's smile widened. "You see, I spent my whole life thinking I was powerless because I didn't have money or connections or family backing. But you've just taught me something important." Maya began walking toward Patricia, not with the defeated shuffle of someone accepting execution, but with the steady, purposeful stride of someone who'd finally found her strength. "What you've taught me," Maya continued, "is that real power doesn't come from money or weapons or the ability to make people disappear. Real power comes from being willing to fight for something more important than yourself." She stopped just outside the range of Patricia's tactical team, close enough to see the growing uncertainty in the older woman's eyes. "I'm Sarah Rodriguez's daughter. I saved David Chen's life when I was 15 years old. I've been surviving on my own for years, helping people even when I could barely help myself. And now I'm part of a family that's worth fighting for." Maya raised her voice, knowing the compound's security cameras were recording everything, knowing that Patricia's own surveillance equipment was documenting her criminal confessions. "My name is Maya Chin, and I'm here to tell the world exactly what Patricia Holbrookshire has been doing to children in pediatric cancer wards." Behind her, she heard James activating the compound lockdown protocol. Emergency barriers slammed shut around the perimeter, trapping Patricia's forces inside while cutting off their external communications. Eleanor was already moving toward the server room, her fingers flying over security codes she'd memorized decades ago. Michael was coordinating with Alex to access the medical research files that would damn Patricia forever. And Maya stood facing the woman who'd tried to destroy her, no longer the frightened waitress who'd resigned from her job that morning, but a daughter, a sister, a Chun, who'd finally found something worth fighting for. "You made one mistake, Patricia," Maya said as alarms began wailing throughout the compound. "You assumed I'd be easy to break because I'd been broken before. But you forgot something important about people who've survived trauma." Maya's smile was fierce now, filled with the same determination that had carried her through her mother's death, through years of poverty and struggle, through every challenge life had thrown at her. "We know how to get back up." Patricia's mask of control finally shattered completely as she realized her perfect plan had just been turned against her by a girl she'd dismissed as powerless. The battle for the Chun family legacy was about to begin, and Maya Chin was ready to fight. The compound's lockdown barriers slammed shut with a finality that reverberated through Maya's bones. Patricia's tactical team found themselves trapped inside a fortress that had just become their prison, while emergency lighting bathed everything in stark red shadows that made the night feel apocalyptic. "Compound communications are severed," James reported, his fingers flying over a security tablet. "Patricia's people can't call for backup, but we can't reach outside help either." Maya felt the weight of their gamble settling over her. They'd chosen siege warfare against a woman with unlimited resources and no moral boundaries. If this failed, they wouldn't get a second chance. "The server room," Eleanor signed, her hands moving with urgent precision. "Patricia's been using the compound's network to store research data she couldn't risk keeping at official facilities. Everything's here, the illegal trials, the financial records, the patient files." Maya turned to Alex, whose face was pale but determined. "How long do we have before Patricia's people breach the inner barriers?" 20 minutes, maybe 30 if we're lucky." Alex checked his watch. "But Maya, even if we access the servers, how do we get the information out? The compound's isolated." "Emergency broadcast protocols," James said, his eyes lighting with sudden understanding. "Federal law requires all pharmaceutical facilities to maintain direct emergency communication with the FDA and CDC. Patricia can't have blocked those channels without triggering automatic investigations. Maya felt hope surge through her chest. So we broadcast everything directly to federal authorities? Not just authorities, Eleanor signed rapidly. Medical oversight boards, patient advocacy groups, major news networks. The compound's emergency system can reach everyone simultaneously. The sound of controlled explosions echoed from the outer barriers. Patricia's people were working their way inward, methodically breaching each defensive layer. Move, Maya said, her voice carrying new authority. Everyone to the server room. Now! They ran through corridors lined with family portraits and expensive art, their footsteps echoing off marble floors that had witnessed decades of Chin family history. Maya caught glimpses of photos showing generations of achievements, medical breakthroughs, business successes, charitable foundations. A legacy that Patricia was willing to destroy rather than lose control of. The server room was a climate-controlled sanctuary filled with humming machines that stored the digital soul of the Chun family empire. Maya watched Eleanor's fingers dance across access panels with the muscle memory of someone who'd helped design these systems. Maya, Alex said, positioning himself by the door. I need you to know something before we do this. Maya looked up from the terminal Eleanor was activating. What? Patricia wasn't wrong about my feelings for you. But she was wrong about when they started. Alex's voice was steady despite the sound of approaching tactical boots. I started falling in love with you the first day I was assigned to watch you. When I saw you spend your break teaching sign language to that deaf customer's little girl, when you gave your lunch money to the homeless veteran outside your apartment, when you stayed late at the restaurant to help the kitchen staff clean up even though you weren't getting paid overtime. Maya's hands paused over the keyboard. Alex, I want you to know that everything I'm about to do, I'm doing because you taught me what it means to be worth something. Not because of what family you belong to or how much money you have, but because of who you choose to be when no one's watching. Eleanor's terminal chimed softly. I'm in. Maya, my God, the files are enormous. Hundreds of illegal drug trials, falsified safety reports, bribes to FDA officials. Maya leaned over the screen, her eyes widening as she scrolled through document after document detailing systematic abuse of vulnerable patients. Children as young as 5 years old used as test subjects for experimental drugs. Families charged hundreds of thousands of dollars for treatments that cost less than $50 to manufacture. Safety data deliberately falsified to hide severe side effects. There are patient deaths, Maya whispered, her voice breaking. So many patient deaths that were covered up. 23 children in the past 5 years, Eleanor signed, tears streaming down her face. 23 families who were told their children died from their diseases, not from Patricia's experimental treatments. Maya felt rage building in her chest, not the helpless anger of someone trapped, but the focused fury of someone who'd finally found their true enemy. These weren't just crimes against abstract victims. These were crimes against children like David, families like hers, people who'd trusted medical professionals to heal rather than exploit them. Upload everything, she said, her voice steady as granite. Every file, every document, every piece of evidence. Send it all. James was monitoring their defenses on his tablet. Patricia's people have breached the third barrier. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they reach us. Then we work fast. Maya's fingers flew over the keyboard, selecting massive data files for transmission. Eleanor, can you access the financial records? Already on it. Eleanor's hands were moving between multiple terminals now, her elderly fingers displaying decades of experience with complex systems. Shell companies, offshore accounts, payments to officials in 17 different countries. Maya, this conspiracy goes far beyond just pharmaceutical fraud. Maya paused in her uploading to stare at the financial data. Patricia's empire wasn't just about controlling drug prices. It was about controlling global health policy, determining which diseases received research funding, which treatments became available to which populations. She's been playing God with people's lives on a global scale, Maya said. A new sound cut through the compound's alarms, helicopter rotors, but different from Patricia's military aircraft. These sounded larger, more official. Alex moved to the window, peering through bulletproof glass at the compound's exterior. Those aren't Patricia's helicopters. Maya looked up from her terminal. What do you mean? Federal markings. ATF, FBI, maybe CDC. Maya, there are dozens of them. James checked his tablet and went very still. The emergency broadcast, it's not just going out. It's being received. Federal agencies are responding in real time. Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet again, but this time in a direction she couldn't understand. How could they respond so quickly? We just started broadcasting. Eleanor's hand stopped moving over her terminal. She turned to stare at Maya with an expression of dawning realization. Unless they were already watching, Eleanor signed slowly. Unless they were already building a case and just needed evidence they could use in court. The server room door exploded inward, and Patricia strode through the smoke with her remaining tactical team. But instead of the confident pharmaceutical heiress who'd been orchestrating tonight's events, she looked desperate, cornered, dangerous in the way that only truly powerful people became when they realized their power was slipping away. "Step away from the terminals," Patricia commanded, her voice cracking with strain. "All of you. Now." Maya stood slowly, her hands raised, but she didn't move away from the computer. The upload progress bar showed 87% complete. "It's too late, Patricia," Maya said calmly. "Everything's already out there. The illegal trials, the covered-up deaths, the bribed officials. You can kill us, but you can't kill the truth." "Watch me," Patricia snarled, raising a gun that seemed impossibly large in her manicured hands. But before she could fire, a new voice cut through the tension like a blade. "FBI, drop your weapons." Everyone on the ground, hands visible. Federal agents poured through the destroyed doorway, moving with professional precision. But Maya's attention was focused on the figure walking calmly behind them. A tall, athletic man in surgical scrubs who moved with the confident grace she remembered from 20 years ago. David Chun, her half-brother. The little deaf boy she'd saved with stories and sign language, now grown into a man whose presence commanded immediate respect from federal law enforcement. David's hands moved in sign language as he spoke aloud. "Maya Chun, I'm Special Agent David Chun, FBI Medical Crimes Division. I've been working undercover for the past 3 years to build a case against Patricia Holbrook Chun's criminal pharmaceutical enterprise." Maya stared at him in shock. "You're FBI? Pediatric surgeon by day, federal agent by night. The perfect cover for investigating medical crimes against children." David's smile was exactly as she remembered it. Warm, intelligent, slightly mischievous. "And Maya, you just handed us the evidence we needed to shut down one of the largest pharmaceutical fraud conspiracies in history." Patricia's gun was shaking in her hands now, her perfect composure completely shattered. "This is impossible. I control medical research funding. I have connections in every regulatory agency." "You had connections," David corrected, "until they realized you were using their children as test subjects. Turns out even corrupt officials draw the line at experimenting on their own kids." Maya felt pieces clicking into place with stunning clarity. "Tonight wasn't an accident. You knew I was going to meet the family. We've been monitoring the Chin family for months, waiting for the right moment to move. When Eleanor finally found you, when she arranged tonight's meeting, we knew Patricia would be forced to show her hand." David stepped closer, his eyes shining with 20 years of gratitude. "Maya, you didn't just save my life when we were kids. You saved hundreds of lives by giving us the courage to fight back against people like Patricia." The upload progress bar reached 100%. Every document, every piece of evidence, every proof of Patricia's crimes was now in the hands of federal authorities and medical oversight boards around the world. Patricia's empire was over. But Patricia herself wasn't finished fighting. "If I'm going down," she said, her voice deadly calm as she steadied the gun in her hands, "I'm taking the girl with me. She started this, and she'll end with it." Maya looked at the woman who'd tried to destroy her, who'd exploited vulnerable children for profit, who'd built a fortune on the suffering of families like hers. For a moment, she felt the old fear trying to resurface. The belief that she was powerless, worthless, too small to matter in the face of such overwhelming evil. Then she thought about her mother, fighting cancer with grace and dignity. About David, growing from a frightened child into a man who dedicated his life to protecting others. About Eleanor, spending 20 years searching for a promise she'd made to a dying woman. About all the children whose lives would be saved because tonight's evidence would shut down Patricia's criminal enterprise forever. Maya Chin was no longer afraid. "Patricia," she said quietly, her voice carrying across the server room with perfect clarity, "you made one final mistake." "What mistake?" Maya smiled, the same fierce expression that had carried her through every challenge in her life. "You assumed this was about me. But it was never about me. It was about every child you've hurt, every family you've exploited, every life you've destroyed for profit. And they all have something you'll never understand. What's that? People who love them enough to fight back. Patricia fired, but Alex was already moving, throwing himself between Maya and the gun. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around, but federal agents were already tackling Patricia, the weapon flying from her hands as she crashed to the server room floor. Maya caught Alex as he fell, her hands pressing against his wound while medical personnel rushed to help. "You idiot," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You beautiful, brave idiot." "Worth it," Alex gasped, his eyes finding hers. "All of it. Worth it to see you finally understand how powerful you are." Maya looked around the server room at her family, her real family, who'd stood with her against impossible odds. Eleanor, signing prayers of gratitude through her tears. Michael, staring at his daughter with wonder and pride. James, coordinating with federal agents to preserve evidence. David, whose childhood trauma had driven him to become the kind of man who protected vulnerable children. And Alex, bleeding in her arms but smiling like he'd just witnessed a miracle. 24 hours ago, Maya Rodriguez had been nobody, a broke waitress with no family and no prospects. Tonight, Maya Chun had brought down a criminal empire and saved countless lives by finally understanding the truth Patricia had tried so hard to hide. She'd never been powerless. She'd just been waiting for the right moment to find her strength. As federal agents led Patricia away in handcuffs, as medical personnel treated Alex's wound, as news helicopters circled overhead broadcasting the story that would reshape the pharmaceutical industry forever, Maya Chen sat on the server room floor and realized she was exactly where she belonged. Home. With family. Ready to fight for everything that mattered. The shy waitress was gone forever. The woman who remained was ready to change the world. 6 months later, Maya Chen stood in the pediatric wing of Boston Children's Hospital, watching her half-brother David explain a surgical procedure to a frightened 8-year-old girl in both spoken English and sign language. The child's face transformed from terror to wonder as David's hands painted pictures in the air. Stories about brave little warriors who would emerge stronger after their battles. The same stories Maya had told him 20 years ago. "She reminds me of you," Alex said softly, appearing beside Maya with 2 cups of coffee. His left arm still moved carefully. Physical therapy had restored most of his mobility, but the bullet scar served as a permanent reminder of the night that changed everything. Maya accepted the coffee gratefully, her engagement ring catching the hospital lights. The ring wasn't massive or ostentatious. Alex had chosen a simple design that reflected her practical nature. But it represented something Maya had never dared hope for. A future built on genuine love rather than survival necessity. "The Holbrookshire trials start next month," Alex continued, checking his watch. "Final pretrial hearing is this afternoon." Maya nodded, though the legal proceedings felt almost anticlimactic after everything they'd been through. Patricia Holbrookshire faced 847 federal charges, ranging from pharmaceutical fraud to conspiracy to commit murder. Her empire had collapsed within weeks, releasing patents worth billions of dollars to generic manufacturers and nonprofit organizations. The children who'd been used as test subjects were finally receiving proper treatment. The families who'd been bankrupted by inflated drug prices were getting refunds. Medical researchers around the world had access to previously suppressed data that was accelerating legitimate cancer research by decades. But for Maya, the most meaningful change was smaller and more personal. "Ms. Chun." A nurse appeared at her elbow. "Your 3 o'clock appointment is here." Maya smiled, setting down her coffee. "Send them to conference room B. I'll be right there." Alex kissed her cheek. "Another family consultation?" "The Ramirez family. Their 6-year-old son needs experimental treatment for a rare genetic condition." Before Patricia's downfall, they would have been charged $3 million and told to mortgage their house. Now, the treatment's covered by the Chun Foundation's new patient advocacy program. Maya had discovered that being a Chun came with resources she'd never imagined, but also with responsibilities that gave her life profound meaning. The family had unanimously decided to transform their pharmaceutical holdings into a foundation dedicated to ensuring medical treatment accessibility. Maya had been elected as the foundation's director of patient advocacy, a role that combined her natural empathy with the negotiating skills she developed fighting for her own survival. "How many families is that this month?" Alex asked. 47. Each one representing a child who gets to grow up healthy because Patricia can't exploit them anymore. Maya's voice carried quiet satisfaction. Sometimes I think about all the families we couldn't save, the ones who suffered before we stopped her. But then I remember David's advice about focusing on the lives we can save moving forward. The hospital around them hummed with purposeful activity, but it felt different from the sterile, frightening place Maya remembered from her mother's treatment. This was a place of healing rather than exploitation, hope rather than despair. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. Asterisk family dinner tonight. Michael's cooking. James bringing dessert. David flying in from surgery conference. Don't be late, asterisk. Maya smiled, typing back. Asterisk wouldn't miss it. Love you, asterisk. The casual exchange of affection still felt miraculous after months of practice. She'd gained a family that actually wanted her presence at their dinner table, that celebrated her successes and supported her through challenges. Eleanor had become the maternal figure Maya had been missing since her mother's death. Michael was learning to be a father 23 years late, bringing the same dedication to parenting that he brought to surgery. James treated her like the sister he'd never had, involving her in business decisions and asking for her perspective on family matters. But it was David whose relationship meant the most to her. The little boy she'd saved with stories had grown into a man who saved children with surgical skill and gentle hands. Their shared experience of childhood trauma had created a bond deeper than typical siblings, built on mutual understanding of what it meant to survive and choose to help others survive too. Maya chinned to conference room B, the intercom announced. As Maya walked through the hospital corridors, she passed a children's play area where a familiar scene was unfolding. A teenage volunteer was teaching sign language to a group of young patients, her hands moving with the same fluid grace Maya remembered from her own hospital vigils. The girl looked up as Maya passed, recognition flickering in her eyes. Ms. Chin. I'm Sophia Martinez. I've been volunteering here since the Chun Foundation started the Childhood Advocacy Program. I wanted to thank you. My little brother received treatment for his leukemia because of your patient assistance fund. Maya paused, seeing herself reflected in Sophia's determined expression. How is your brother doing? Full remission. The doctors say he'll make a complete recovery. Sophia's smile was radiant. I'm studying pre-med now. I want to become a pediatric oncologist like Dr. David Chin. I want to help families like mine. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. This was how change really happened, not through dramatic confrontations or legal victories, but through young people like Sophia choosing to dedicate their lives to helping others. Keep fighting, Maya said softly. The world needs more people like you. Conference room B contained the Ramirez family, parents who looked exhausted from months of medical uncertainty, and a bright-eyed 6-year-old boy who was playing with toy cars while his parents discussed treatment options that could save his life. Mr. and Mrs. Ramirez, Maya said, settling into her chair with the easy confidence she'd developed over months of similar meetings. I've reviewed Miguel's case with our medical team. The good news is that the treatment he needs is not only available, but it's also completely covered by our Foundation's assistance program. Mrs. Ramirez began crying immediately, her husband's arms wrapping around her as relief crashed over them both. There's no cost to you, Maya continued gently. No insurance requirements, no income verification, no waiting periods. Miguel can start treatment next week. How is this possible? Mr. Ramirez asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. Maya thought about how to explain the complex chain of events that had led to this moment. The restaurant encounter, the family revelations, the conspiracy that had nearly killed them all, the choice to transform inherited wealth into a force for healing rather than exploitation. Because sometimes, she said simply, people who've been powerless find their strength and choose to use it to protect others. Later that evening, Maya sat around the Chun family dinner table, surrounded by conversations in 3 languages and the comfortable chaos of people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Michael was telling surgical stories that made Eleanor laugh until she cried. James was explaining a new business venture to David, who provided medical perspective on biotechnology investments. Alex was teaching everyone card games he'd learned during his recovery. Maya watched them all, marveling at how natural it felt to belong somewhere. She thought about the resignation letter she dropped in an alley 6 months ago, when her biggest problem had been making rent and her greatest dream had been opening a small cafe. Now she had resources to open a chain of cafes if she wanted. But more importantly, she had a purpose that made her wake up excited every morning. The Chun Foundation was expanding internationally, bringing affordable medical treatment to developing countries and funding research into rare diseases that pharmaceutical companies ignored because they weren't profitable enough. Maya Chen had found her calling in the intersection of business acumen and humanitarian passion, using the family's wealth and influence to tear down the barriers that kept medical treatment away from people who needed it most. "What are you thinking about?" Alex asked, noting her contemplative expression. Maya reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. "I'm thinking about all the families we're going to help next year. The children who'll grow up healthy because we're fighting for them. The medical researchers who'll have funding to pursue treatments that actually heal instead of just generating profits." She paused, looking around the table at her family, her chosen family, who'd stood with her against impossible odds and emerged stronger together. "I'm thinking about how grateful I am that Eleanor never stopped searching, that you chose love over loyalty to Patricia, that David became the kind of man who protects vulnerable children. I'm thinking about how proud my mother would be to see what grew from the seeds of kindness she planted in a children's hospital 20 years ago." Alex lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her engagement ring. "And what are you thinking about for tomorrow?" Maya smiled, her heart full of possibilities. "Tomorrow, I'm thinking about the Rodriguez family in Phoenix whose daughter needs heart surgery. The Chin Foundation is flying them here next week for treatment. After that, there's a meeting with researchers in Geneva about expanding our pediatric cancer treatment programs to refugee camps." She looked around the table one more time, at the family who'd taught her that real power came not from money or connections, but from the courage to fight for something bigger than yourself. "I'm thinking about how many more lives we can save, how many more families we can keep together, how many more children we can give the chance to grow up and become the kind of people who make the world better." Maya Chen had started as a shy waitress who believed she was invisible to the world. She discovered she was part of a powerful family, survived an attempt on her life, brought down a criminal empire, and found love with a man who'd risked everything to protect her. But most importantly, she'd learned that true strength came not from what family you were born into, but from what you chose to do with the power you discovered you'd always had. And Maya Chen was just getting started. The future stretched ahead of them, full of challenges and opportunities, families to help and lives to save. But tonight, surrounded by love and laughter and the unshakable bond of people who'd fought for each other and won, Maya Chen was exactly where she belonged. Home, with family, ready to change the world, one saved life at a time. Asterisk, what did this story teach you about finding your true strength and the family that chooses to stand with you? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the power of courage, love, and the choice to fight for what's right. Asterisk.